Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to You Can Talk. I am back. I know I missed you all for a solid week. Things were just so crazy at work. I couldn't keep up with my schedule and my YouTube and all the things going on, but I am back this week. And so, welcome. I hope that you're excited to be here and anxious to learn about what we're going to be talking today. So, this morning, I am starting a new series speaking on some more controversial topics, or has this been on my heart to, talk about some things that people are struggling with? People are having a hard time going through some tough times. Good morning, Levi. How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. Welcome. People have been going through some tough times, and part of the reasons that we struggle sometimes in our relationships is because we do not talk about the things that are causing real issues in our relationship. So I want to tackle some of those topics. I'll be speaking on things that I have some direct experience with on some way, shape, or form, and sharing some things that I've learned and incorporated into my life and into my daily practices that have helped me to cope with myself, to cope with the people that I'm in relationship with, and has even improved my relationship with God. Now, I am a Christian, and I will be talking about these things from a Christian perspective. So if you're not into that, it's fine. Take what you want and leave what you don't. So take what's useful to you, okay? But I can tell you that it is only through the strength of God that I've been able to overcome and tackle and talk about, even have the strength to talk about some of these issues that I'll be talking about over the next few weeks, okay? So the first topic that we're going to be tackling this morning, and this is a big one, so I'm going to do my best to try to talk to you all about this in 30 minutes. The first one that we'll be talking about is addiction. And I'm going to be talking about it from a familial perspective. I have not been an addict myself. Truth be told, we probably all have some sort of addictions in our lives. But for this one, I'll be talking about drugs and alcohol. So drugs and alcohol have been a part of my immediate family for as long as I can remember, really, since I was a young child. It was in our home something that we struggled with and dealt with on a regular basis. For the sake of privacy, I won't tell you all exactly who, but just know that it was in my immediate family. So if there's someone in your life that is close to you, someone that you care about, and you're struggling to talk about this issue with them, then I'm going to be talking about this issue today for you or with you. And then hopefully you can have some takeaways to that you can put to action, right away. If you don't have anyone to talk about this subject with you. So the talk in You Can Talk stands for Tame the Tongue, Approach with Compassion, and Listen Deeply. Good morning, Harrison. Good morning, Andrea. How are you? Good to see you all this morning. I am happy you are here. Happy Monday to you all. Good to see you. All right, so the TALK is Tame the Tongue, Approach with Compassion, Listen Deeply, and Knock Down Barriers. So that's kind of the principles that I'll be focusing this conversation around. So looking at the principle of taming the tongue, this is where I had to begin with dealing with my anger, okay? Because when you have an addict in your life, immediately in your life, once you get past those feelings of hurt and disappointment and frustration, often anger is what encompasses your day-to-day life and your day-to-day conversations with the people. Partly because we can't get over the selfishness, the sense of entitlement, the time and the resources, all the things that they take up, all the sacrifices that we make, that other people make in effort in trying to help them to get better. The lack of gratitude often that they will have, an appreciation, the fact that sometimes they may not even acknowledge the things that we're doing, the efforts that people are making to try to help them to get better. And they will just kind of go into their self-contained worlds of addiction. So taming, when it comes to that first part of taming the tongue, was where we really have to work on dealing with our anger. Uh, and I'll just say this is what I had to work on, right? Because I'm speaking from a personal perspective. Um, However, when we allow that anger to take over our mouth, our words tend to we tend to say things to try to make them feel ashamed, ungrateful, useless, worthy, and unloved, right? Because we're trying to hurt them as much as they have hurt us. And our attempts to make them feel guilty and make them feel ashamed and unworthy and unloved and all that, to make them feel somewhat of the pain that we are feeling, is often, for naught, because typically the reasons people are addicts is because are they're trying to avoid those very feelings. They're trying to escape those very feelings that we are trying to put on them. Anytime they get overwhelmed, anytime they start feeling hurt and pain and shame and unworthiness and all that, that is typically when they go off into escape deeper into their addiction. So anytime we sort of bring on those sort of words that makes them feel that way, we can potentially trigger that thing that's causing them to feel, that's causing them to feel those emotions. But we may still be dealing with our anger, right? So where do we, express these feelings of anger sometimes, right? Well, we need to find some kind of outlet. Okay, we have to find some kind of outlet. And with that outlet, the first person typically that I speak to or talk about is to God. I typically, because I do have a relationship with God, He is my go-to, and I will, talk to God about what I'm feeling. But we need to let it out. So if you have a friend, if you have a neighbor, a pastor, then you can, and you feel comfortable with talking about those things, then talk about it to them. But if you don't, then write about it. I'm a big journaler. I love to write. I love to, I have to get it out. I'm one of those people that I don't do well holding things in. So if I feel like I have to get it out and there's not anyone that I can trust to tell it to, I will pray about it, because I know that I can always tell it to God and not have to worry about it getting anywhere, or I can write it down. So these are just some things that I have done to help deal with my anger. Here's the thing about anger that we often don't perceive to be the case, right? Anger and negativity actually raises defenses and creates barriers. We don't think about that when we are expressing our anger. But positivity and acceptance, and when I say acceptance, not accepting their drug and alcoholism, but accepting that they have that the life that they have chosen is the one that they are choosing to live, helps us to deal with our anger and put that anger into perspective. We have to get to a point where we recognize and realize that they are their own decision makers. We cannot make their decisions for them. But it allows us to, when we can sort of get that into our minds, it can help us to release the anger. The sooner we realize that we cannot want more for others than what they want for themselves, the better we'll be able to mentally handle their bad decisions. Okay. We tend to take on their decisions. What happens is we tend to take on their decisions as our own. And that's what causes us to, get angry, because they're doing things that we don't want them to do, right? And when we're angry with them, that's not to say that we don't love them, that we don't care about them, but we want better for them. We want better for them. And we get mad and angry that they seem to not want better for themselves, or they don't seem to have the strength to overcome the addictions and want better for themselves. And so that allows us to get angry. Good morning, Donna Reed Love. How are you this morning? Good to see you. Welcome. So like I said, we have to realize that if we could, we would work on it for them and help them to get the results that we would like for them to have or want them to have. But that it doesn't work like that, right? We can't do enough to allow them to see the results. They have to be willing to do it themselves, to work on it themselves, and put in some work themselves, because us doing it for them doesn't allow them to reap the benefits. So once they're willing to put in some work, then we can work on being encouraging, right? Not supporting. Now, notice I'm not saying supporting, because when we deal with addictive family members, one of the first things that we often tend to do is feel like we have to support them, right? And that form of support can look like all kinds of things, taking care of them, you know, just all kinds of things. But we need to be able to encourage them, and there's a difference. So this is where the A in the talk comes into play when we talk about approach with compassion. It's one thing for us to say things like, right, like, you're a waste of a human being. How can you be so selfish? I can't stand you. All the mean and ugly things. You're so ungrateful. You're evil. All the ugly things that come out of our mouths towards the person who is struggling with addiction because of our anger, right? It's one thing to say those things, but God actually wants us to do the exact opposite, right? So in Romans 12, chapter 20, he says, if your enemy is hungry, and often we tend to look at that addictive person as if they are, our enemy, because that's how it feels sometimes, like they're working against us instead of with us. So we can often look at them like the enemy. But he says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. And then Matthew says to love them and to pray for those who persecute you or do wrong by you. So this means that he is telling us that we don't shame them. That's not the approach. The shaming of people, the shaming of what they're doing is not the approach that we are to take. So rather than tearing them down, we have to work to build them up. And help them to improve that sense of self, because often what they're struggling with is their sense of self and who they are, and they feel like they already feel less than, they already feel worthless. Sometimes they already feel down and depressed and all that stuff. So us putting more words of shame and guilt on them is not helping them to come out of their addiction, right? It's not helping them to mentally deal with it, or even being willing to face it. Often they will isolate themselves from us because we are the very people who are putting this on them and making them feel this way. So they'll isolate themselves from us and then go off and escape into their addictions even deeper. So we have to work on saying things like, you have everything in you to accomplish this, to do this. I believe that you can. You were created to do more than this. And you have so many gifts and talents or abilities or whatever it is that about this person that is good, are the very things that we have to remind them of and pull them out of. We have to remind people of who they are sometimes in order to get them to what's the word? In order to help them to see themselves in a different light, and to help them to see that others also see them in a different light. Because when we're struggling and deep into our addictions, all we think is that that's what people see. And because that's what people are constantly reminding us of, of our addictions and how horrible of a person that we are. However, when we're talking to this person, if we remind them the good of who they are, the good about themselves, that they deserve more, that they were created for more, that they are more, that they have more, that they can do more, all these types of things, then it sort of helps them to see, rise a little bit out of that mentality of worthlessness and depression, and allows them to see themselves in a different light, and allows them to see that others can also see them in a different light. So we have to sort of plant those little seeds of positivity and then constantly water them. And I know it is difficult. It's not easy, because we want to focus more on the anger, and we think that causing them to feel horrible about themselves is somehow going to make them want to do better. And it just doesn't. So we have to work on, being uplifting and work to improve their self-assurance, because that is the biggest thing that they are struggling with, is that self-assurance. Throwing money and guilt and shame and all that stuff is just not going to get it. It's not going to get it. And if that's the approach that you've been taking, please let me know how that's been working out for you, because I can't imagine that they are responding well to that negativity, the shame and guilt. I know, because I've done it myself. I'm speaking, from a personal perspective. And so many years I allowed my anger and my words, the words coming out of my mouth, to dictate how I treated the person, how I loved, whether or not I showed them love, whether or not I loved on them, all of it. And it never caused our relationships to get any better. Never. So we have to remind people of who they are in Christ, because we can't force them into wanting to do something about their addictions. They have to do it when they're ready. And when they're ready, they will come to us or to someone who they feel like will listen to them. And that's where we get to the L in talk, which is the listen deeply. We may not ever be able to understand the whys of their decisions, but we can listen and work to try to empathize. We may not agree with the things that they do. We may not even agree with the things that they're saying, but we can't negate their feelings. If ever you've talked to an addict, you'll often find that they will tell you all the things that they're struggling with in their mind. Who did this? Who said that? All the things that have caused them to become addicts. And we may not agree with those things. We may think, what? Like, how could you say that, right? How could you feel that way? But whatever it is that they say, whatever it is that they feel, we have to acknowledge that that's what they're feeling, that is their truth. Whether it falls in line, whether we agree with it or not, that is their truth. Those are the things that they're struggling with. Those are their demons. Now we can work to try to alter their feelings if there's something that they're missing, or we can work to, try to shed some light on some situations that we may feel are incorrect, or just, whatever it is we're feeling about it. Or maybe if they're confused about something, if there's some misconceptions about something, we can work to try to shed light on those things. But other than that, we have to believe that that is their truth as they believe it to be. And so we have to at least be willing to accept that, even if we don't agree with it. But here, are the other two people that we have to listen to. And the L is the listen deeply and talk. So the other two people that we have to listen to, the addict and take in that what they're saying is their truth. And then we have to be willing to listen to ourselves, and we have to be willing to listen to God. And here's why I say we have to listen to ourselves. If you know that as the family member or friend of an addict, that things are getting too overwhelming for you, right? Like all of it is getting to be too much, and we're becoming mentally unstable or even afraid of what we might do when we're around that person. I would definitely remember times where my anger would take over me so much that really, I think if there was a weapon around, I don't know that I would have been able to trust myself around what I would or might not do, just because of all of the hurt and extreme, things that were happening that caused me just to be enraged, at times. And so if you know that you are in that space where you may be mentally unstable about this situation or about this issue, then we have to pull back. You have to know when you have to pull back, when you have to learn to not be so invested in the situation, in the family, in the relationship, and sort of create some separation from you and the person, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely put them out of your life, but you may not be so involved, as you used to be, or as you feel like maybe you needed to be, or that you had to be. So whatever you have to do, you have to listen to yourself and know that, okay, this is getting to be too much for me. And if you can manage to find a way to do that, then pull back. Like I said, we cannot be working harder on their addiction and their addictive behaviors than they are for an extended period of times, because that is where the anger and the frustration often creeps in, and those negative words tend to fly out of our mouths. And then barriers are raised, and suddenly they disappear back into their escapisms and into their addictions. So we have to listen to ourselves when things are getting to be too much. Then we have to listen to God, right? We have to listen to God. In Matthew chapter 5, God challenges us to deal with our anger. He says that anyone who is angry towards their brother or sister is subject to judgment. So if they have something against us, before we even try to give our gifts to the Lord, we have to go and be reconciled with our brothers and sisters. We have to go, but also in Matthew 18, he gives us the specifics of that. He says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault, right? So go and talk to the person that you are angry with and tell them, hey, this is upsetting me. This is, causing me to feel this way, because they may not know. They may think that you don't care, or that is not affecting you, right? So you can go and let them know, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm having a hard time with this. I'm getting angry about this, frustrated, or, whatever the situation is. Go and let them know, right? Then he says, if he listens to you, then you've gained a brother. However, if not, take one or two others with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. So this is often when you will see those sort of interventions. You may take, another family member, another friend, somebody who they're close to, and you all sit down and do an intervention with them. There are positives and negatives with those interventions. I think if you're going to do something like that, you really should have a professional or someone who has experience with that, because again, often those interventions are times where people are pouring on the shame and the guilt and on the unworthiness, and making them feel even worse. And at the same time, if the person is not ready to make a change, you as a family sometimes trying to force them into that is not going to be as productive as you think that it would be. So if you're going to do some type of intervention, make sure that you have some sort of family member around that can keep the conversation positive and in a way that will allow the addict to receive it in love and not in guilt and shame and unworthiness and all that type of stuff. So you want to make sure that if you're going to take that approach, that you try to do it correctly. Okay. But if they are not, and if they still refuse to listen, tell the church. And if that is unfruitful, let them be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. That means that after we have made all the attempts to reconcile with our addict, that person in our life that is causing us this hurt and frustration or anger, and we've done our due diligence, then we don't have to continue to feel guilty about the decisions that they have made in their lives. They have to live out we have to allow people to live out their decisions and to also live out the consequences of those decisions. And this is where that can be very difficult to do, because we often, depending on the type of person you are, we want to save them, right? We want to be the one to save them from their experience, to save them from their addictions, to pull them out of the things that they're struggling with. And we can't do that. Only God can do that. Only God can do that. That's not to say that we can't work to help them and encourage them in some way, shape, or form. But again, they have to be the ones to want to make the change. And they have to be the ones to be willing to want to put in the work. And if they're not willing to do that, you're just going to make yourself be more and more frustrated, and even potentially even cause yourself to have a nervous breakdown, wanting things to be different. And there have definitely been times where I've had to walk away, where I've had to let it go, where I had to allow them to take my hands off of them and be in their situation, because they weren't ready. They weren't ready. And it was not easy, right? It was not easy. But that's not to say, in my particular situation, that there were not times where they were ready. And when they were ready, I was right there you know, talking with them, or, you know, helping with getting things set up for places for them to go, to work on their addictions and all that type of stuff, going to meetings, family meetings, all that type of stuff. Those are definitely all the things that I have done to be there for them in that capacity of encouragement and support in those types of ways, rather than pouring money or pouring all of my energy and efforts into trying to save them. Okay, because that just caused me to be frustration when they don't respond or when they don't do the things that we may want them to do. So we have to, work on listening to ourselves, listening to God, listening to them, and making sure that we keep ourselves mentally healthy as well. If you are the family member, if you are the one that is, struggling with dealing with the addict. Good morning, Chef BC Cherry Bliss. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Welcome in. We are talking about the addicts this morning, addicts. So if you have a family member, anyone in your life, that is the conversation we're having this morning. All right. So we have to work to create a safe space when we are dealing with these addicts in our lives, a safe space for ourselves and a safe space for the addict as well. Often, we may not try to be, we may not do that. We may not do that often. We'll jump in and attack, and angers and emotions get raised and words go back and forth, and people are upset, they're crying, they're angry, and then people are separated, they walk off, and nothing is resolved, and that's what we're trying to move away from. You may not be able to save that addict in the time frame or when you would want to be able to save them. But what I want us to focus on is to work on having somewhat, as much as possible, as a healthy relationship with them as we can. Because here's the thing that I also had to realize that the enemy does. The enemy may already have them in the grips of his hands and dealing with their addiction. But we can allow that. Good morning, True Fan. How are you? Good to see you. The moment we allow that to interfere with the relationship that we have with the addict, then we're also being robbed. Right? We're also missing out on the relationship that we could be having with our family member, with our friend, with our loved one, whoever it is that we're close to. And then everyone is suffering, right? The addict is suffering, we're suffering. But because we've allowed the enemy to come in and ruin the relationship because of their addiction. So even though they are, addicts, or maybe deep and still struggling into their addiction, if possible, sometimes we can still have somewhat healthy relationships with them. It may not look like everyone else's relationship or a typical relationship. We may have some hard boundaries. We may have some soft boundaries that we have to keep around these people, but we can still have relationship with them. Because for me, I know often that was the thing that I often felt robbed about. Like, I can't be in relationship with you. I can't have you as my family member. We can't be close because this issue is taking over our lives. And that was the thing that would make me so angry, right? Because I feel like I'm missing out on having you in my life and being able to have this person that I love and who loves me and all that, because this addiction is getting in the way. But then I had to realize who's allowing it to get in the way of the relationship. That person, myself, the enemy, right? So, and then once I learned that, okay, well, we can have some kind of relationship. It just may not look like the type of a typical, relationship that we would have, whether it's your, whatever it is, if it's your mother, your sister, your brother, whoever that is for you. It may not look like a normal one, but it still can be. You can still have a relationship with them. It just means that we may have to have some barriers around that time. And we can either make that time that we have together positive, or we can make that time that we have together negative. It's up to us. So we have to, but in order to do that, we have to create the safe space. And this is where the K comes into talk, and that's knock down barriers. This may mean that we have to speak in different types of environments. I know for me and my family member, for many years, we always really kind of had to have a referee in the room. So somebody else needed to be in the room rather than just me and that person, because I would struggle so much. Like my anger would just, take over so much that anytime we were by ourselves, I would allow that anger to and my emotions to take over what I wanted to say to them. And then it would end up being a negative situation. But I noticed often if there were other people in the room, I could sort of keep those feelings at bay, and we could have normal conversations or just talk about other things, right? Other than the recent act that of negative act that just happened. And it was just helpful sometimes to have another person in the room. Also, if we can create, like I said, we may have to be in a different environment, right? We may have to try to place ourselves in positive environments with the person rather than negative environments with them. So yeah, if you need a chaperone, or if you need a referee, or if you need to change the types of locations that you typically have conversations with this person, then do that. Because that will help to make a difference in how you all interact with each other. You may have to lay out some understandings and some agreement, and you may have some agreements, and you may have to make some commitments, just to be able to even just be, right? So for me personally, there were certain things that, this family member would do that would trigger my anger, right? And so in order to deal with that, I said, look, I love you. I want to have relationship with you. But every time you come at me with this, that, and this, it triggers my anger, and I don't want to have any dealings with you. Because believe it or not, even though they're addicts, they still want to have relationship with us. They still may be deep into their addictions, but they still so often, want to have relationship with us. But because we're so angry, we don't allow that to be. And we feel like, well, if I punish you by not allowing you to be in my life, then maybe that'll help you to get better. But it doesn't. It just drives them deeper into their addictions. So, therefore, we have to decide, okay, well, I'll let you, we'll work on being in your life, but we're going to have some boundaries, right? I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not okay with that. I would rather us not, talk about this. I'd rather you not ask me about that. Different things, whatever it is, the standards, whatever those things are for you, then, express those things. And if they're willing to commit to that and you all can stay in relationship with each other, then do that, right? Because at the end of the day, if it's your family member, someone you care about, and you still want to be in relationship with them, or somebody that you just can't put out of your life completely, right? Because they are a family member, then work on, trying to have some sort of boundaries or standards around that relationship that will allow you all to be in communication with each other, love on each other, care for each other in whatever way that you can, because really it'll do both of you good. So, pretty much they may not like what you are, laying down or laying out, as far as they may even get, mad or upset. But one of the things that I have found to be very effective is that being consistent with who you are, how you are, in how you showed love and care and support. Being consistent as that is very effective. It's very effective. How you continue to encourage them, how you continue to love on them in the way that you feel comfortable in loving on them, or accepting love from them, and however you feel comfortable in accepting love from them. But be consistent in expressing the love, okay? Letting them know, hey, I love you. I know this is going on. I know that I don't like this. You know how I feel about it. The struggle and the damages this is causing, but I still love you. I still care about you. So be consistent in expressing the love, be consistent in pouring on the encouragement and reminding them that they are more than their addiction, that our family, that our relationship, our friendship, all of it, we are more than this addiction. And we don't have to allow it to prevent us from staying in some kind of relationship. Like I said, that relationship may not look like what we want it to look like. It may not look like what they want it to look like, but you can still have communication, be able to have communications with this person. If you feel led to meet a need, if you feel led to do something, then do that. But don't barricade them out of your life, because that is typically not effective. So try to show up in your lives, show up in their lives, and try to stay in some type of relationship with them. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to run over these one more time for those of you who came in late, is the T in talk is taming the tongue. So we're going to work on our anger, work on the things that we say to those, to our addict family member or friend. Change those negative statements into positive statements. I mean, that's pretty much self-explanatory. If you're in the mindset and thought to say something negative, good morning, Destiny Forever Walks. How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. I'm doing well this morning. It's Monday and I'm happy to be here. So tame your tongue, work on making those negative statements into positive ones. Approach with compassion by building them up and helping them improve their sense of self-worth. Okay, because that's the thing that they were truly struggling with when they're suffering from addiction. Listen deeply. Accept their truths. Okay, you may not agree with them, you may not like them, but accept that these are their truths, and then accept your own truths. Realize, hey, this is getting to be too much for me. I'm going to have to create some level of separation between us and this person. Okay, and that may be a little bit harmful, but we have to keep ourselves mentally and emotionally healthy so that we can deal with the situations and also maintain our own lives. Because what happens is, that negativity gets, the addiction gets into that person, that negativity gets into our lives. It resonates throughout our families and in every aspect of the family. And if we're not careful, it'll take over and completely separate everybody from each other. And it doesn't have to. So, but that requires work. It requires work. And sometimes we don't always know what that should look like. And so we have to work on recognizing that and accepting that it may not look like what we want it to look like, but it can still be. It can still be. So listen deeply to them, listen to yourself, and listen to God when things are getting too overwhelming. And then knock down those barriers by working to create a safe space. Allow them into your life, but create the space for you all to be in relationship with each other so that you can reside in each other's lives and in each other's spaces without there always having to be knockdown dragouts and just conversations of extreme anger, hate, and resentment, because that's not going to help to create a healthy relationship. Chef says, yes, it's challenging to separate anger and disappointment from what really matters the most, and that is loving them in spite of. It is. It really is. That loving them in spite of is hard to do because we don't understand. We can't wrap our heads around why they do the things they do. And then truth be told, they can't even wrap their heads around why they do the things that they do because the addiction has taken over. So, and once that has happened, they're doing irrational things that they can't even explain themselves. And we tend to think that they love and care about the drug or the alcohol or whatever their addiction is more than they care about us. And we take it personal. And we think if they cared about us enough, if they loved us enough, they would stop. And it's just not that simple, unfortunately. Their addictions don't cause them to love us any less. It's just something that they cannot control, that dopamine and all the stuff that takes over their minds, it is like, it's just hard to control. They really need help on a deeper level than just, the things that you say to them, or trying to make them feel guilty. They need real professional help. And sometimes they need chemical help, having to get on other drugs to sort of tame that beast of addiction that can take over the physical and physiological aspects of their bodies. So we have to work on not taking the things that they do so personal. And that can be very difficult to do because we see it as them doing it to us. And it's hard for us to separate the addiction from the person. So I fully understand how how difficult that can be. But if we want to be in relationship, if we want to salvage any type of relationship with that person, we have to be willing to work to see it differently, whether we understand it or not. Sometimes we have to act outside of what we feel in order to make change and in order to improve behavior, in order to improve the relationship. Okay. So yes, you like that approach with compassion. Yes, that's the talk. So all of the lessons that I'll be bringing will sort of be around those principles. These are the things that I have had to work on. I put these principles together because these are the principles that I had to use and incorporate into my life in order to improve my communication. So over these next 25 classes, pretty much that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be incorporating those principles so you all can see how I use those principles into my conversations to create the healthier relationships. So next week, this coming Wednesday, I think I'm going to be talking about enabling. Okay, so that's our next topic for Wednesday is enabling. So if you are an enabler, we're going to be talking about that on Wednesday. All right. So I hope you all had a good lesson this morning. If you missed some of it, go back and watch it from the beginning. And hopefully you can pull some good nuggets out. I'm going to say a quick prayer and then we'll be moving on for today. I'll have a tip out tomorrow and I'll see you all back here on Wednesday. All right. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you for trusting us and loving on us and doing for us and taking care of us and providing for us in spite of us. Father, we often forget that we are often guilty of doing the things against your will, doing things that you would not want for us to do. However, you love us and you continue to stay in relationship with us. You continue to talk to us and provide for us and do for us. In spite of the things that we do unto you, in spite how we hurt your spirit, in spite how we say things against you, Father, that do not please you. So thank you. Help us to show that same grace and mercy towards others when they are deep into their addictions. Anyone in this chat, Father, who is struggling or watching the replay, who is struggling with a family member, friend, someone who they care deeply about in their addiction, help them to change their mindset. Teach them how to control that anger, to tame their tongues, to change those negative words into positive ones, and to speak life into their loved one, to speak life into them through words of positivity and encouragement. Help them to approach with compassion. Help them to open their ears and their hearts to be able to hear what that family member is saying and when they're dealing with their struggles. Help them to open their ears to be able to listen to themselves when they are getting too overwhelmed with the things that they're mentally and emotionally struggling with. And Father, most of all, help them to be able to hear you, reach their hearts, reach their minds, touch their spirits, and speak to them and give them calm and peace and assurance that you are there, that you know, that you see, and that you are still in control. You still have control over the situation in spite of how things look. So Father, give them that peace and help them to rest their struggles into your hands and allow them to be able to be free from the turmoil that addiction can often cause in our lives. and help them to knock down the barriers to create the safe space and to approach, like I said, with compassion and do what needs to be done in order to improve the health of the relationship. Help us to not allow the enemy to take over our lives, to take over our families, to take over our friendships. And that's often what addiction does. But remind us that even though this still may be in our lives, we can still have relationship. It may not look what we want it to look like, but Father, if we can make it look like what you would desire for it to look like, then we can be headed on the right road. Give us the strength, give us the ability to overcome and to see past what's in front of us, but to be able to see our loved one and our family member the way you see them, Lord, as your child, and help us to love on them, encourage them, and stay in relationship with them. Thank you for this time. Thank you for creating the space for us to have these conversations, and just pray that it be effective and that people have takeaways that they can use and incorporate into their lives right away. We love you. We thank you. These things I ask in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys. Hey, Inspired Gazelle. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're getting ready to head out, but if you can, please watch the replay. We're talking about, people struggling, have family members or friends who struggle with addiction. All right. So I'll have a tip out tomorrow. I'll see you guys back here on Wednesday. You all have a wonderful, blessed, and beautiful day. Go love on your family. Go love on your friends. Love on yourself. Love on yourself. We love you. We thank you. And, be the light. Be the light. We have to be the light in this world. So please take care. All right.